A former partner of Sweet Baby Inc. by the name of Heart Machine is still reeling. An indie company that I covered previously that had massive layoffs at the studio is falling apart at the seams to the point of now requiring to find external funds to stay afloat, up to and including opening a Patreon account. And we all know how this is going to go. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. Heart Machine is in the news for starting their own Patreon account, going forward with Alex Preston, the founder of Heart Machine, taking to YouTube and publishing a video with the somber tone and basically saying, the world's out to get us, everything sucks right now, and we really need money to stay alive. And gamers are looking at this like, you mean from us? Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out SmashJT.com for the full article breaking down how Heart Machine has now taken to Patreon trying to stay afloat, when really what I look at with all of this is, it's just more bloat.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I run Heart Machine, and we're here to talk about the Patreon. So, state of the industry, not great right now. Games are the greatest form of expression that humans have ever created. There's a common saying in development that it's a miracle that any games are made at all, let alone good ones. And now, it's even more brutal. Over the past 2 years, the industry has rapidly changed, flipped around and turned upside down. Funding for new projects is sparse, even for successful developers. Everything is far more expensive to make. Paths we used to be able to take to create projects no longer exist.
I mentioned Heart Machine a few weeks back because their studio was on the verge of collapse already back then, and oh boy, it hasn't gotten any better at all. They're known for titles like Hyper Light Drifter and Solar Ash, but their recent move to launch a Patreon has pissed off quite a few gamers in the community. People are feeling betrayed, and the reasons are pretty obvious as to why. And while their struggles are real and the passion for game development is obviously there with them, when you go to Patreon begging for money to keep a game studio alive, you've already lost. The overall response from the entire gaming community has been overwhelmingly skeptical, and for good reason. After it got found out that they were aligned with Sweet Baby Inc. working on their games, gamers overall were like, okay, that's another company we need to avoid, and because of that, they realized quickly that they weren't making any money on their games, and now they need to go to the very gamers that aren't buying their games to ask for money without getting a game in return. When gamers support creators on platforms like Patreon, they typically expect some sort of tangible rewards that feel worth the financial commitment. That's kind of the point of Patreon in a nutshell. Will there be people supporting for no other reason than just being kind? Of course, there always is that. But enough people to sustain the entire studio on promises? No, this is very unsustainable. This situation is very different than the typical YouTuber or artist or something that they're creating on Patreon for fans of them, because there's not really a motivation for anyone to give them money. Because in the grand scheme of gaming, I hate to say it, it sounds really cold, but there's so many great indie developers out there. Why would you need to support this one specifically when you could support other ones as well that don't need a Patreon to survive? Add to that I found their post on X promoting the Patreon from about a week ago a tad curious. It has 255 hearts and 3 comments, which tells me they're either botting for attention or they have an audience filled with virtue signalers, which is honestly more likely. But either way, neither one of those reasons supports you on a journey. You need people that actually care about your product, your company, what you're selling to them, customers that want you to make something. If you're just saying, hey, we're an indie studio and we're struggling and we need money to survive, gamers are going to be like, uh-huh. And why are you coming to us on this one? Can't you figure it out on your own? There's plenty of examples out there where single creators, developers created incredible game experiences on their own in their free time after their day job at night, building an incredible experience from one person. And yet we're supposed to look at this and be like, oh no, gamers need to take it on themselves to support this entire game studio of basically bloat for games that nobody's really clamoring for in the first place.
Studios have closed, many have left, and we at Heart Machine are not immune to this, having gone through layoffs in November of this year.
I know it comes across as pretty obvious, but I'm going to say it anyways. Supporting a YouTuber typically comes with a steady stream of content, like videos, live streams, bonus perks like behind the scenes access, all built around the core product that you get from the YouTuber. The video themselves. That's the whole point of the Patreon for YouTubers, for example. Now you're taking a different situation of an indie developer and saying, okay, they're going to bring you behind the scenes stuff with game development and lock it behind a Patreon instead of give that to the gamers that want it. It's just, it doesn't translate the same way.
You've likely heard about this on some front. It's grim. 30% of all game developers have either been laid off or had their roles significantly reduced or affected over the past year alone.
With Heart Machine's Patreon, the core product is vague at best, and in a weird way, it ultimately comes across as begging for money to keep their doors open for no other reason than, trust us bro, we're good people that just need to survive to make these games for you. And it's like, I can't even keep up with the games that I'm getting from other companies that I care about. Why should we be giving additional funding to this indie company with no promise of anything in return in the long run?
Since the old models are not enough, we have to adapt. So we're asking for support to help us to continue to not just survive, but to thrive. To help us prototype and build new projects, to help support us when the state of the industry has made it so much harder to exist.
On their Patreon, they promise insights from their development process, exclusive art assets, and discussions about industry turmoil. But the harsh reality here is that games take years to develop, and there's no immediate or even eventual product tied to the financial support. Imagine spending $120 a year as a Seeker tier backer and receiving nothing but concept art, design documents, and prototype gifts in return. Cool, I guess. But honestly, I'm not seeing this as much of a differentiator in the landscape of great indie devs everywhere else. And then you pair that with the biggest problem of all, the elephant in the room that you gotta talk about. The association that Heart Machine had, at least at one time, with Sweet Baby Inc., and how it hasn't been very transparent how that association went down and went away, if it even did go away, because they're not telling people anything. They're not trying to disassociate themselves with Sweet Baby Inc. and swear them off and say, oh, we made a mistake with this or that. They don't want to cause any ruffled feathers. They don't want to cause any rifts in the industry. They don't want to be blackballed by the buddy-buddy system behind scenes. So they're just like, hey, yeah, we're not working with them anymore. Trust us, bro. We're not listed on their website anymore. And honestly, with everything that's gone down, why would any gamer give a dime, a penny to any company working with Sweet Baby Inc. with everything that's transpired behind the scenes when they're not even getting a game in return in this situation? Sweet Baby Inc. is the consultancy agency infamous for attacking gamers like Cabrutus and trying to get his Steam account taken down for daring to create a curation group on Steam covering their controversial diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting. They are the people behind starting Gamergate too, and I've covered this previously plenty of times in other videos. Sweet Baby Inc.'s involvement with pretty much anyone has become a death kiss, prioritizing ideological messaging over gameplay and directly alienating core gamer audiences in the process. For Heart Machine, their association with Sweet Baby Inc. has led down a road of complete destruction. These are the patterns we're all recognizing along the way, and the outcome is rarely, if ever, positive.
Ever since we got started, back in the Kickstarter days, we've been big on talking directly to our audience. And we think this Patreon is an opportunity for us to do more on this front while also benefiting.
Gamers have grown extremely wary of projects influenced by DEI-driven design, not because they oppose diversity, but more so because the initiatives feel forced and out of touch with what customers actually want to purchase. As one user said in reply to Heart Machine, weird flags don't sell. And many gamers see Heart Machine's Patreon experiment as yet another example of their own misguided priorities and thinking that they're more important in the grand scheme of the game industry than they actually are. And again, I know this sounds really cold to say it, but if you aren't making a product that is driving customers to buy it, then that product is not going to succeed in the grand scheme of the industry. Crowdfunding has long been a divisive topic in the gaming community. Platforms like Kickstarter had once been heralded as a way to empower a ton of indie developers, but years of mismanaged projects and unfulfilled promises have left many people feeling extremely burned. Heart Machine's decision to directly now rely on Patreon feels like an unnecessary and unwarranted evolution of this very same trend, asking for ongoing financial support without delivering any tangible immediate reward. And I get it, desperate times call for desperate measures, and I gotta almost give a shout out to the founder, Alex, putting this forward and having the sob story, sad face, kind of like, oh man, this sucks, the industry sucks, everything sucks, we need your help to survive. Almost like putting a video out there just to tug at your heartstrings and get some tears and get you emotionally involved, just to get you to open your wallet to keep this company afloat. But you gotta take a step back and say, wait, why am I doing this? Like, what am I getting out of this? A game? Maybe? Someday down the road? What promises do you have here? This isn't it. What it comes down to is this company got way too big, way too fast, way too bloated, hired way too many people for a project that is, at the end of the day, a very basic indie looking game that doesn't look terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but honestly kind of looks the same as every other indie game that does this type of style. And at that point, gamers are looking at it like, what makes this company any more special than the other companies out there doing the same damn thing but not asking for additional funding? It doesn't make any sense.
There are a few key goals that we have in mind for this Patreon. One, to give a more thorough and deep insight into our own process and what it takes to make games. We'll be sharing exclusive write-ups, videos, concept art, design documents, GIFs, etc. from all of our projects past and present. Two, to share more about the issues in the industry that are driving the state of turmoil, e.g. corporate consolidation, overspending, accelerating costs, and a changing market. And three, to reach a bigger audience with more transparency in an otherwise notoriously opaque industry in the hope that we can share and do our part to help others better navigate and survive.
Pair with that their two stated goals are to share more about the issues in the industry driving the state of turmoil and reach a bigger audience with more transparency. Those are particularly drawing quite a bit of criticism as well, because there's zero logic in placing this kind of information behind a paywall. How do you claim that you want to educate a broader audience about the industry's corruption while simultaneously charging those people to access the transparency? That's not actually being transparent. That's hiding information behind a paywall and saying, hey, we'll be transparent with you if you give us money. Heart Machine's move to Patreon may have been born out of necessity, but it's clear that the vast majority of the gaming community isn't buying in. Between the lack of any kind of real value, the ironic paywall for transparency, the lingering distrust from their past actions, and on top of all of that, the influence of Sweet Baby Inc., the effort here is completely misaligned with the actual wants and needs from the core audience that Heart Machine had created previously. This is alienating the very people that wanted to support your company moving forward. It doesn't help anything. For a company that once stood as a shining example of indie success, this Patreon directly alienates the very community that helped build their reputation in the first place. It's not that gamers don't care, it's that the trust, value, and confidence simply aren't there. And this is the unfortunate reality with capitalism. The greatest cream of the crop rises to the top, and everything else kind of falls by the wayside. And it's a cold world, especially in the game industry, and it sucks. My heart genuinely feels for everyone losing their jobs that's trying their best, that isn't a wokey loser that shouldn't be in the industry in the first place. My heart genuinely goes out to you. But at the same time, you gotta look at this and say, what's the rationality behind this? Why would someone give us money if we're not giving them anything in return except a promise? That doesn't sell. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. If you guys want more information, check out smashjt.com for the full article. I will link it in the description below. If you appreciate what I'm doing here, hit the join button. Whether you do or not, though, I still make the videos. That's the difference. I don't go away. This is something that YouTubers can just do. If people want to support it, they can. If they don't have to. That's the difference. A game company needs to be able to sustain themselves based off of what they create and sell that. If you're creating videos on Patreon saying give us money and that's all you're creating for people, it's not going to do anything. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.
We all love games. We're here because it's an industry driven by passion, but it's never been easy. And we've been making titles that we're extremely proud of for 10 years now. And we want to make sure we can stick around for another 10. Approaches like this Patreon are part of what it takes to make sure of that, to get through the toughest times and come out ultimately better. We hope that you enjoy the content and inside access that we're providing here. And thank you so much for your support.
Smash it, change.